This is Atlas!
Thank you for listening to the Monash International Affairs Society podcast.
Women globally perform around 2.5 times more unpaid care work than men, and the peacebuilding field is no exception to this invisible burden. This month, new Monash research suggests there's a major factor affecting who gets to participate in these operations, and it's something that often happens at home: caring responsibilities.
The project examined how caring responsibilities affect recruitment, career progression, training and deployment across military and police institutions. Among women surveyed, just under half of the women said caring responsibilities had negatively affected their career progression. This week on Atlas, we will be joined by Dr Eleanor Gordon to explain the research and the invisible burden and discuss how women peacemakers carry the load. Beyond caring responsibilities, the findings represent a broader trend in inequalities within peacebuilding. Just under 10% of military, police, justice, and corrections personnel in field missions are women. While this shows that women are egregiously underrepresented in peace missions, it is a marked increase from 1993, when women made up just 1% of personnel. Ultimately, responsibility for deploying women is at the disposal of UN member states when contributing to peacekeeping operations.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lizzy. And also notably, Lieutenant Colonel Rubana, a Bangladeshi army officer who served with UN peacekeeping in Cote d'Ivoire and South Sudan, told UN Bangladesh that she faced immense challenges getting leadership positions as a female military officer. She recalled having to prove that she could contribute to decision-making processes and operations as much as a man. Last month, Bangladesh called for women's leadership in peacebuilding efforts at the UN.
And just 2 weeks ago, UNESCO reported that more than 8,000 women, girls, and young people across South Sudan had expected to benefit from the two new peacebuilding projects. One project will provide psychosocial support, livelihood opportunities, digital empowerment, and peace-building activities to strengthen social cohesion and empower young people to become active contributors to peace. The other focuses on women's leadership in peacebuilding and expands economic empowerment opportunities. So whilst the figures show stark inequalities, efforts are being made to enable women to play a greater role in conflict prevention and recovery. Statistically, men are more likely to die in the front lines. However, women are more likely to die as an indirect result of war, for example, due to lack of access to healthcare or food.
And yeah, shockingly, Lizzy, according to The Intercept, women in the US are also more likely to be killed by their fellow servicemen in the military than enemy combatants. Women are also more likely to be victims of domestic violence and sexual violence abuse, which rises during and following conflict and humanitarian crisis. In 2024, conflict-related sexual violence increased by 87% in just 2 years. How, despite these unequal impacts that women face, we really need to be asking, where are the women in peacebuilding initiatives and processes?
Yeah, and as women are often not armed combatants themselves, they could not enter reintegration programs and were excluded. However, the overwhelming evidence shows that when women are included in peacebuilding, the peace is much more likely to last, as the probability that violence will end increases by 24%. Notably, women peacekeepers are able to attain valuable information from local populations, particularly women and children, that would otherwise be difficult to reach. This is particularly true in societies where women are restricted from interacting with males, including male personnel, due to sociocultural norms.
Yeah, and in 2007, India deployed the Indian all-female formed police unit to the UN mission in Liberia. It was the first all-female peacekeeping unit in the UN's history. Their presence in Liberia helped empower Liberian women, providing them support in registering their concerns and complaints, and to also join the Liberian police services. In a country with high rates of gender-based violence, the contingent made security services more accessible to women, and the unit showed that women in peacekeeping consider and accommodate the unique needs of women and children in conflict affected in the region for a more empathetic approach. So when women's engagement in peace processes has these significant benefits, we need to be asking, how can we better support these women who engage in peace missions and women in conflict zones in general?
Absolutely, Claire. And why are women still being failed? To answer these questions, we are joined by the incredible Dr. Eleanor Gordon, Associate Professor in Politics and International Relations at Monash University. Dr. Gordon is also the Director of Monash Global Peace and Security. Her new research with Monash's Global Peace and Centre for Security suggests that one significant reason for women's underrepresentation in peace processes has been overlooked, and that is caring responsibilities.
Sounds great. I'm really looking forward to hearing from her.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Eleanor. Firstly, could you please outline the findings and the significance of the recent research that you led from Monash's Global Peace and Security Centre?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were funded by Global Affairs Canada, which is part of the Canadian government, and they've been leading the ELSI initiative for women in peace operations for the last 10 or so years, trying to increase the meaningful participation of women in peace operations. They funded a 3-year project that I led, and it was looking at caring responsibilities as a driver of women's underrepresentation in peace operations, but also security sector institutions. I worked with colleagues, including Professor Katrina Liku while she was here, and she's now at the University of Queensland, Dr. Richard Fosu, Lauren Lowe, all at Monash, but also security institutions globally. And that included the Peace Operations Training Institute, based in the United States, the International Association of Women Police, based in the UK but globally. They have representation globally, and then security institutions in both India and Indonesia, and finally the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Institute. Trying to remember all of them, and it's really important to emphasize India and Indonesia because they led the research there. So we focused on 3 countries, the United Kingdom, India and Indonesia. In Indonesia it was Bryn, and it was the key person there leading the work, did her PhD at Monash, Dr. Irene Gayatri, and in India it was the Council for Strategic and Defence Research, and that was led by Dr. Tishya Kalari and Anushka Chavan. So we all worked together over 3 years, and we interviewed over 500 peacekeepers and uniformed personnel and stakeholders representing 63 countries. And we found that caring responsibilities, particularly looking after children, adversely impacts women's access to security institutions, the likelihood of promotion, access to training, and critically what we were focused on, deployment to peace operations. And I can talk more about how that arises and the impacts on security institutions and peace operations, and the launch that we recently had in New York, if you like. But I won't say more now.
Yes, well, I would actually love for you to follow on to kind of discuss the impact that this research on the topic has had so far on like destigmatizing care and increasing awareness of and support for personnel with caring responsibilities.
Absolutely. So we spent over about 2 years gathering data, and every single person that we interviewed and surveyed, we not only asked what are the challenges you face, but what recommendations do you have. When we analysed this data, and we did a really thorough analysis over about 12 months, we translated this analysis into various outputs. It includes traditional scholarly outputs, but comprehensive reports. The big report was over 200 pages, and we thought actually we need something more useful if it's going to have an impact. So we translated the big report into policy papers. We translated it into an organisational toolkit, and that has specific tools that security institutions and the UN can use to identify bias, for example, that might come into panels for promotion, but also checklists for leaders if they're in peace operations, or checklists for personnel to support their well-being before they're deployed to peace operations. And crucially, we also developed it into a training program with the Peace Operations Training Institute, and it's now freely available online. It's only been running for less than 2 months. It's already had 1,000 peacekeepers and uniformed personnel enroll in it. It's got great feedback. So that's how we secured the impact. And then we're starting to get feedback on the type of impact that it's having. We launched these outputs in New York a week ago. I was there, and we co-launched it with the Permanent Mission of Canada to the United Nations, the ELSI Initiative Fund in the United Nations, and Monash GPS. We had a keynote speech by General Pierce, who is the UN Secretary General's military advisor, and also presentations by the Peace Operations Training Institute, representation from the UN Network for Women in Peacekeeping, and different UN organisations in the ELSI Initiative Fund, and they all said how critical and useful this research is. Many of the peacekeepers we've spoken to have said it's beginning, as you said, to destigmatise care. So now they feel comfortable talking about caring responsibilities, not just women, but men as well. For so long, men in particular have been reluctant to say that they miss their families while deployed to peace operations, or that they need support, or their well-being has been suffering because of family separation or other things. So they're beginning to say, now they feel able to raise these issues, and leaders in security institutions and peace operations are saying they're beginning or increasing their awareness of the struggles that personnel with care and responsibilities face when they're deployed. So it's beginning to have a huge impact, and we're really delighted about that.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear that it's having that impact, and to kind of really understand how integral this research is. Could you kind of outline the ways in which involving women in peace operations can really impact long-term peace?
Yeah, absolutely. The meaningful representation of women, or the meaningful participation of women in peace operations, has long been recognised as critical, hence the Government of Canada's funding of the ELSI initiative, and our research is begun, of course, with the Women, Peace and Security agenda, and it recognised, for example, that women are disproportionately and uniquely often impacted by armed conflict, so it's essential that they participate in all efforts to prevent conflict and build peace after conflict. And it's also recognised that women are significantly underrepresented in peacekeeping, so uniformed personnel, representation from militaries and police, and they're obviously male dominated, and there are lots of reasons for that. Aside from acknowledging that women are uniquely and disproportionately impacted by conflict and insecurity, it's also critical that women participate in conflict, in efforts to address conflict, prevent conflict, and build peace, because we need a diversity of skills and capabilities. We need the talent, we need the best people, and of course it's not always men, and that's another reason. And we've also got a huge amount of evidence to show that when women participate in efforts to build peace, the outcomes are more successful and sustainable. And that's partly because if you have women participating in peace operations, they're likely to engage with diverse communities, help to contribute to building that trust in the peace operation, and reaching out and addressing the diverse security concerns that there often are.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of following on from discussing women's underrepresentation in peace missions, is there kind of concern that the women who are included in these operations can be tokenized, or perhaps expected to bear the brunt of gendered issues, thus limiting their role across these operations? Or are there perhaps unique risks that women face in peace operations, for example, being exposed to sexual exploitation or abuse or gendered harassment?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Yes, is the short answer. So because women are significantly underrepresented, so in peace operations amongst uniformed personnel, they constitute about 10% of all deployed personnel, and it's about 8% amongst troops, so military troops. That means that you're likely to have units where there might be one or two women, and so of course they are more vulnerable because of that. for a number of reasons, vulnerable perhaps from their own colleagues, but also in the community. What we've also found is that women tend to either be marginalised, so not in frontline roles, or they tend to be sidelined into gendered roles, perhaps in support roles in peace operations. And more often than not, it's assumed that when it comes to mainstreaming gender or integrating gender into peace operations, that's a woman's responsibility. So you might find that a woman has 3 jobs in effect, or is double-hatted or triple-hatted. So they're responsible for addressing all the sort of gendered harms, or adopting a gender lens when it comes to implementing the mission or the mandate.
Yes, and following on from that, as the gendered nature of caregiving is a key driver of women's underrepresentation, can you tell us more about the challenges that women with caring responsibilities face in security sector institutions generally?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite complex. As I mentioned, we spoke to hundreds of uniformed personnel, about 65% of whom were women. So most of these challenges pertain to women, but it's not just women. We found that men face some of these challenges as well, particularly if they have care responsibilities, and especially if they're primary carer for children, but also perhaps for elderly parents or people in their family who might be unwell. So there's 5 broad challenges that women in particular face. Organisational challenges, so that might be an absence of policy, human resources policy that enables them to take proper parental leave, carers leave, or engage flexibly when they return to work after maternity leave, for example. Poor leadership or recognition of the challenges they face, cultural barriers, so that's normative assumptions about who does security work, who does care work. So it's, obviously the sort of gendered norms around who should be in the armed forces and police, and who should be doing the caring work in families. They tend to be diametrically opposed, and so adversely impact women's participation in the security sector. Maternal bias is a key driver of women's underrepresentation, but also their challenges when it comes to promotion, and so representation amongst leadership positions. Maternal bias is about assumptions that mothers in particular lack the capability, lack the capacity, lack loyalty, or their loyalties lie elsewhere. So when a woman has a child, all of these biases, conscious or otherwise, tend to come into play. And there are other challenges as well, personal challenges, so perhaps feelings of guilt on the part of the mother, or concern about being deployed to an insecure environment if they're the primary carer, not having the networks of support or organisational support, and the recognition that their career is likely to be impacted if they take leave. So what this contributes to is not only women's underrepresentation, but women tend to become exhausted because of the extra work, the lack of organisational support, and all of the emotional, guilt and stress and worry. A lot of women that we spoke to said they worked extra hard so they wouldn't face these biases from their colleagues or their leadership. So these are the challenges, and they all intersect and sort of compound the harms that women often face, but also people with diverse gender identities, and critically men. So men's caring responsibilities tend to be overlooked, and as I mentioned at the start, is often assumed they wouldn't want to take paternity leave or parental leave. They don't need the support to remain connected with families when they're deployed. So they suffer harms as well to their well-being, but it really harms a woman's career.
Yes, absolutely. And I kind of, following up from that, I kind of was interested in the broader impacts on personal well-being, performance and capability when this care is inattentive, which you've kind of touched on. So it sounds like this is really something that impacts a person's professional life, their personal life. It can really impact mental and physical health, and it has a really huge impact on the person, and then a huge domino effect from that. Yeah.
Definitely. There's not, you've said it brilliantly, and the only other thing I would say is that when you're deployed to a peace operation, the 2 things that are often missing is lack of communication, so internet connectivity, especially in remote camps, for example. And that's really key for personnel to remain connected with families, and also support to travel home during long deployments on rest and recuperation. So oftentimes peacekeepers have to fund that themselves, and when they're away for 12 months, it can be really challenging.
And then, kind of just to finish up, can you explain what the UN member states and security sector institutions can do better to support women and personnel with caring responsibilities moving forward?
Yeah, as I said, we've developed the training, the toolkit, the policy briefs. We've created a website in multiple languages called caringforpeacekeepers.org. So all of the recommendations and the practices are there, and organisations can look through that. The training is available to anyone, including students, at Monash. So I would recommend people look at the website and the training, which is on the Peace Operations Training Institute website.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Eleanor. It was such a pleasure and privilege to hear from your vast experience on this topic. Thank you so much for listening to Atlas, a Monash International Affairs Society podcast. If you have any topics you would like for us to talk about, or if you have any questions, you can email us at atlas@myas.org.au. We have our diplomatic gala coming up, which you can check out on the Myas Instagram account. And we also have Pivot Point every second Thursday, where we discuss articles that have been released every fortnight on Myas's international affairs publication, Pivot. Thank you for listening.